We're now being joined by correspondent Susan Tharani from New York. Hi, Susan. Now, Trump has been booked and released from the jail in election racketeering case. What is the latest that you can tell us on the story?
Yeah, it's a very sad day for the United States to have a former president's mugshot being taken, considering the fact that he's one of the most well-known people around the world, and everyone knows that he's not a flight risk. However, unfortunately, the lead prosecutor, Fani Willis, who brought this Georgia case against the former president, had campaigned on trying to get the president in a jailhouse and that mugshot, as had Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor here in New York as well. So what we're seeing here right now is just such a polarized atmosphere. On the one hand, you have America's left that's ecstatic, almost on ecstasy, because they finally got this mugshot that they've been talking about for so long. But then you have the Republicans and Trump's supporters who clearly see this as election interference, considering the fact that this is current President Joe Biden's main rival and likely will be the Republican nominee. And they say that, you know, there was so much time for these prosecutions to come forward, and they bring the argument of First Amendment issues that's being violated in the Trump case. So, you know, extremely polarizing, and we'll have to expect the Republicans to basically do the same, you know, when they have the opportunity. It's set a very bad and difficult precedent at this point, regardless of whether Trump will be found guilty or not, but the processing itself and the theatrics around it.
Right, Susan, talking about the mugshot which you mentioned, it itself looks very interesting, rather. Trump looks angry even, and he claims innocence. Yeah, well, he is very angry, but I will say just before that he was processed, a little before 7:30, Joe Biden used this day, his processing and turning himself into the Georgia court to send his donors a message saying that, you see, this will likely be my opponent. This is the perfect time now that he's probably going to be guilty. This is, you know, according to that email, then you should donate to my campaign. But I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, we'll see this mugshot everywhere for those that oppose Donald Trump, you know, on T-shirts and mugs and everything. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump camp themselves use this mugshot, which is not a traditional mugshot, as you mentioned, to campaign themselves, you know, turn this crisis into an opportunity, as they have so far with these indictments. Right, Susan. Now, these conversations about Trump's fate, sometimes it gets lost in politics versus the law enforcement. He seems to be turning these legal hurdles into opportunities, gaining the sympathy of his supporters. What do you have to say on that?
Yeah, that's absolutely how it is. And it's not just the sympathy of his supporters, but, you know, there are those that are watching from the sidelines and wondering whether or not questioning the results of an election merited so much investigation, notably in Fulton County. Because remember, we know that Stacey Abrams had done it, and we know that Hillary Clinton had done it. We know that during the Bush versus Gore elections, you know, Florida was a huge state. George Bush had done it as well. So, you know, this is something that has had precedent. So I think many are watching to see, you know, how far is too far in sort of ganging up on Donald Trump. And his supporters, of course, stand by his side. He just got a 10% lead from the previous poll, which has 60% of the Republican Party at his side. But again, you know, there are those that are apolitical. They may look at this mugshot and say, this is too far. You know, we don't want, whatever happens in the courtroom, whether he's convicted or not, we just don't want an elected president that has a quote unquote mugshot or, you know, has been indicted so many times. So, like I said, it's just such a polarizing environment that it's hard to find a middle ground on this issue of Trump.
Absolutely, Susan. A mugshot of a first former U.S. president. We'll, of course, be tracking the story very closely here on WION. But thanks very much for joining us right now.